Hey, track stars! I am back to give you the significant Greek mythology story of Narcissus and Echo. Hopefully, everybody in my house will be quiet so I can go ahead and record this because they are really wilding today. But anyway, I love them. I'm about to choke all of them out. Okay, so the story of Narcissus is important to today's culture because it brings up the ideology of two things: how society both one supports narcissistic tendencies, and two also supports the ideology of sexual fluidity. Now, this is a trigger warning, okay? To any of you listening under the age of 18, I repeat, to any of the listeners today who are under the age of 18, this content is not for you, okay? However, with parental consent, you may stay. Also, for anyone who is not in a good mental space right now, I suggest that you come back and postpone this episode, to a later time, because today's episode, as a trigger warning, we're going to be speaking about ooicide, for those of you who can read in between the lines. And we're going to also speak about, again, sexual fluidity. So if you're not keen to that, for educational and entertainment purposes only, I suggest you postpone this. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and dive into a little backstory. So, the story of Narcissus was written by the Greek mythologer Canon. And it's important also to note that the term narcissist is a derivative of the name Narcissus from this myth, and was first introduced to widestream culture by none other than Sigmund Freud, who is a very famous psychologist. In fact, he has used a lot of terms within psychology that we now use today. Also important to note that the term narcissist is also classified in the DSM as of 1968 as a clinical term. And yes, in today's pop culture, we can mistakenly diagnose people as narcissists. However, we shouldn't. It's very irresponsible to do so because there is a difference between a narcissist and a person who has narcissistic tendencies. So I want to clarify that. Please do not self diagnose, it is very irresponsible. And if you do feel the need to seek any type of therapy, please do so. We do live in a day and age now where, yes, a lot of things we have done wrong, but therapy is one I can definitely say that we're going in the right direction. Okay? So, with all of that being said, let's go ahead and dive in. Now, it's important to note when it comes to Greek mythology, there may be very and many variations of what you would consider a classic myth. But that's the beauty of Greek mythology. Most of it has been through storytelling. So, you have those family members that kind of add in some details, but for the most part, I'm going to try and stay as true to the structure as possible. So, for those of you who may be listening, please don't come for me. Okay? Now, this story takes place in Thespiae, which is a town that is on the outskirts of Thebes. And Thebes is a very prominent place in Greece for those of you who do know. And it's also important to note that at the time of this story, there was a specific god that was worshipped in that time whose name was Eros, or the god of infatuation. Okay? So we have our main character, Narcissus, who is notably known for his self obsession and extreme ego. And depending on who's providing the story, he's either a mortal man or he's a cross between a nymph and a river god. Again, these details kind of vary depending on who's telling the myth, but I just figured I'd throw in both, just in case if you're familiar with either or you just don't know. Now you're in the know. So the myth starts out with Narcissus and his mother, Narcissus as a baby, and his mother going to see a person with a gift of foresight. Now, side note, sidebar, I don't suggest anybody listening to this go to a psychic for good reason. Some of you may have, some of you may not have, but we're thinking about it. I suggest you don't, for the simple fact that we already spoke on this channel about consent and how irresponsible it is for you to consent to things spiritually with your mouth and heart. Though you may have good intentions to get the answers that you think you may need, I suggest you pray about it and ask God what's right, because man's ways are not above God's ways. And there are many people who like to manipulate, hurt, and do evil to you. So you never know what spirits, entities, whatever may enter you through way of a medium. Now, if you'd like to, we can talk about that at a different time, a different episode further. Just put it in the comments and let me know, okay? So, back to the story. Narcissus being a baby and his mother taking him to see a psychic because she wants to confirm how his life will be and tells her that her son will be the most beautiful man on earth. So she asked if her son will live a long life, and the psychic tells her her son will grow old if he doesn't get to know himself. Now, that's an important detail for later on in this story. But like anyone who would be hearing that type of advice, she's confused because what in the world am I supposed to take from that? And him not explaining himself any further than just that sentence, she decides to depart and go about her way. Now, we then skip to the part where he's a grown man, and as the psychic predicted, he's strikingly handsome. He's a hunter and would go hunting for sport every morning, looking as attractive as ever. And all who knew him basically knew how much of a narcissist he really was. So, side note, sidebar, he also proves to his friends, companions, that although he can arguably be the most attractive man in society's looks wise, his attitude and self centeredness can leave people in limbo as to whether it's worth dealing with him or not. We don't know that person. You may get to know somebody because they're attractive, but then you realize, like, wait, there's literally no room for me if we had a relationship because they're clearly enough for themselves. They're not looking for anything but somebody to admire them. And it's like, well, you might as well just get a mirror. Well, this is what this is leading to in due time. So his braggadocious nature literally just disgusts everyone around him, all his hunter companions, all of that, but they grow used to it. They just leave him where he's at. Sometimes you just gotta leave people where they're at. You know? Don't feed into them. Let it roll off. Taking the higher ground. All that, right? So then shortly after we meet another character who is important to the story, and his name is Amadeus. And Amadeus is a man who heard Narcissus basically brag about himself in the town square and decided to meet up early in the morning to learn how to hunt. And shortly enough, those around him can probably tell that hunting game isn't the only thing he came for. Now, here's where it's important to note that in this day and age, just like in this story, there's a culture of sexual fluidity where anything goes. Man, woman, woman, man, 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 woman, woman. I'm not the one to say whether it's right or wrong. God already told us how he feels about it, so I'm not going to dig too further deep into that. Just letting you know for cultural context of the story. But your boy Amadeus is feeling Narcissus. Okay? So, as an example of narcissist vanity and self centeredness, right? Him and Amadeus are in the forest as usual, like they are every morning. And Amadeus happens to find a doe. And this doe is beautiful, okay? He's just like, yo, I don't even know if I should shoot this or not. And Narcissus basically is just like, yo, my mans, you just gonna let this doe go to waste? What are you doing? And Amadeus explains, I can't possibly shoot this. This animal is beautiful. What's wrong with you? Without even thinking about it, Narcissus, he takes the bow and arrow, shoots the deer, okay? And it's just like, all right, cool. So I'll shoot it. And basically tells him nothing is so beautiful that you can't shoot it. What? Like, sir, are you even shooting this doe for food or just because you can? So early on, we already see that Amadeus is getting a front row seat to Narcissus not caring about anything but his own gratification. Okay, we already described that episode. I mean, that specific definition of pride and how it relates. That confidence and that deep pleasure of satisfaction derived from his own achievement, right? And so that pride is part of his downfall. And Narcissus, even after him shooting the doe, but Amadeus found it, he takes the credit for bringing back the doe when it was really Amadeus who did the work to find it. And Narcissist is just looking for all types of praise, as usual. As per usual, just all about him, right? So Amadeus is foot with the bill for carrying the dead doe back to town. And to his benefit, he meets up with another hunter named Nestor. And here's where we see why Nestor is the homie. Okay, shout outs to all the Nestors in our lives. Look at this. Look at this. Okay, Nestor warned him not to get swept into catching feelings for Narcissists because it won't lead to anything good. So Nestor explains that just because you love something doesn't mean that it's what your heart deserves, because the heart holds no true logic. Loving the wrong person or thing, even when you know or don't know, in an incorrect manner can ruin your inner self, is basically what he's trying to tell him. But here's the thing. Amaneus being infatuated with Narcissus, we all have that friend, right? They're super engulfed in somebody else's life. They can do no wrong because they're that infatuated with them that even when the truth presents itself, they still deny it because they want so badly for it to work. And if you don't have that friend, you're probably that friend. Ooh. Okay, let me get back to this. So, another notable part of the myth would be Narcissus. After he hunts, he has a tendency to disrobe before any man or woman to see, and without shame, with full frontal nudity. This guy is really feeling himself. Like, this is the P. Diddy of hunters. Okay? It's weird. So, Amadeus, amongst those who have seen Narcissus nude, further spirals into obsession but realizes the problem with him being infatuated with Narcissus is that there's no room for Narcissus to love anyone because his heart is full of himself. So, the next notable part of this myth, Amadeus and Narcissus go hunting as usual, and they take down a wild boar to present to the goddess Artemis. And one thing to note about Artemis, she is a goddess that only takes live game, meaning anything you try to go hunt for, she's not going to accept that specific sacrifice dead. She wants it alive. So the only way to get something like that is to wound it and tackle it, but keep it alive. How difficult is that? But anyway, so after wrangling this wounded animal for the feast of Artemis, Amadeus makes small talk with Narcissus as they're gathering this wild boar, and talks and asks about the women that gawk at him the previous day. And Narcissus is just like, so you gonna keep asking me about this, or are you gonna help me tackle this wild boar? So he just, apologizes, and then they continue the small talk, and Amadeus asks Narcissus if it's a common occurrence, to which Narcissus replies, yes, but none of the women that surround him seem worthwhile, and they continue to bring this wild boar to the altar for the temple. So meanwhile, Amadeus struggles and plays back what Narcissus said in his mind, trying to rationalize if what he said was out of him not feeling love at all, or was he more so focused on becoming the best as far as looks and talent, and that maybe he genuinely couldn't find someone to be his equal. And thinks, how could someone so attractive be single? Now, literally, all the things he's questioning to himself, he got the answer already in his face. This guy clearly doesn't value people, he values what people can give him. Okay? Textbook narcissist. Okay? Now, I'm no psychologist, and this is a myth, so I can say that. But for people who may or may not be in your immediate circle, or you may meet within 10 to 15 minutes, please, again, please do not go ahead and diagnose people with narcissism. That is very irresponsible. Just simply say, until they're diagnosed as being a narcissist, just say they have narcissistic tendencies and deal with people how you may. Okay? Thank you. So once they get to the temple, Amadeus realizes that no matter how close he thinks he got to Narcissus, all Narcissus cared about was taking the credit for everything he did with Amadeus on the hunt and thinking about himself above all others. And if the conversation wasn't directed towards him, he was either drinking or he swiveled the conversation to come back to him being the subject of conversation. And Amadeus is beginning to wonder if anybody else at this feast is seeing what he's seeing. And what I think, in my opinion, Amadeus is failing to consider is that these people that he hunts with know him way longer than Amadeus has known Narcissus. So they probably already tied to him. They don't care, my guy. You're the only one who cares. Okay? Suck it up. Okay, track stars? When we see red flags, we're going to take out the rose tinted glasses from our face and we're going to see things for how they're to be seen. We're not falling for the okie doke no more. This year, we're going to love ourselves properly, and that means giving respect to ourselves and not lying to ourselves, okay? All right, mini rant over. So, Amadeus tried to ask Narcissus what his plans were after the feast and tells him he would like to spend time with him. And my boy Amadeus sneaks in a kiss. Hey, yo, how you just. Like, I know this culture is sexually fluid, but for you to sexually just kiss somebody of the same gender, don't even feel them out to see if they go that way, that's crazy. That's assault. And I don't think people in New York play that. We might throw hands after that. Like, I'm not going to hold you. Okay? So Narcissus asked what would Amadeus feel if he told him that he couldn't return his feelings of adoration. And basically, Narcissus is appalled. So Amadeus says that if Narcissus didn't return his feelings, that he simply believes that life wouldn't be worth living. Trigger warning in full effect. Okay, guys? You might want to click off if you're not into ooicide. So Amadeus tried to tell him to give it some time. And Narcissus then says he will never love him no matter what happens. You're not going to try and convince somebody to love you. Ladies, okay, men, you can leave the room right quick or not. I don't care. But ladies, we are not trying to change men into wanting to be with us. If he wanted you, he would be with you. Okay? Men lead, women follow, and we're gonna talk about that eventually. So sit tight. Okay? All right. Don't make me pull on you through the screen. Okay. Now, Narcissists coldly tried to end the conversation, telling him he doesn't love Amadeus. And Amadeus tried to tell him to give it some time, and he's like, yo, I'm never gonna love you. My guy, you're wildin', you're bugging. So Amadeus asked Narcissus what he should do since he doesn't love him. Again, trigger warning. Narcissus hands Amadeus a sword, telling him since he feels that life isn't worth living without his love, then he's already answered his own question as to what he should do. Man, this guy Narcissus here, man. Yo. So the next day, Narcissus gets out of bed. After not having proper sleep, he woke up hours before he usually would. He gets out of bed, goes towards the wash basin to cool himself off after noticing that it'll be a noticeably warmer day than usual. He puts his tunic on, tries to head out the door, only to realize he has trouble opening the door. So him thinking somebody's outside his door is just like, okay, whoever is outside my door playing, could you please move? Right? He got places to be and things to do and adoration to obtain. He don't got time for no games, right? So eventually, after finding out what is hindering him from fully opening the door and budging it open, he froze after opening the door and realizing it was Amadeus's body in a pool of blood with the sword he gave him in his chest on his doorstep. Bro, what? Okay. It's like the game of Clue here. Who killed Amadeus on Narcissus' doorstep? Was it Colonel Mustard? Was it, I can only imagine what's going through Narcissus' head. Like, I want to say poor guy, but at the same time, you're trash. You're very much mid, so we don't care about you. You suck as a person. But this is still crazy, right? So Amadeus was then returned to his home, blade still in him, and was stretched out on a table in his former home, surrounded by family, his hunting friends, and other villagers came out to pay their respects. So Narcissus naturally is there with the rest of the hunters. Narcissus standing furthest from all of them because he had no qualms or guilt about his role in the possible debauchery. So his friends all gathered to figure out what had happened and how is it that one day we're literally at a feast and the next day this guy is ZEADZ. Okay. And Nestor decides to ask Narcissus if he was with him the prior night. And Narcissus coldly just confirms he was, but he didn't see him die. So, Narcissus leaves, telling the others that they need to go hunt, while the others question why he even bothered to change the subject like that and leave. Everybody's grieving. Homeboy's just like, Narcissus, all right, we out. I gotta go hunt. What? So Narcissus only cared really to leave because all the attention was really pushed towards Amadeus, and he wasn't getting any. And for the most part, they took Narcissus' stoic mannerisms as a form of grief, but Nestor was just like, yo, hold on. I got some questions, and runs off after Narcissus. Narcissus who's going into the woods to hunt. Okay. So Nestor's curiosity, he begins to ask Narcissus of the dialogue that happened between him and Amadeus, because he realized he was the last person to speak with him, as per Narcissus. And so Narcissus explains what was said and what was done the previous night. Nestor, in disgust, thought of Amadeus' mom and what she would think of all this, knowing that this guy literally offed himself because Narcissus, straight up being the narcissist that he is, was just, yo, I don't love you. I'll never love you. You want to sit here and say you can't live without me? Prove it. Basically, without saying. Okay. So Narcissus explains he had no control over his actions and refuses to take accountability in his part of what happened. Nestor calls Narcissus out for loving the level of admiration, to which he explains it's the ultimate form of flattery. So Narcissus doesn't even feel bad for what happened in the slightest. Not only does he not take accountability for his part in what happened, clearly this guy wasn't all mentally there, because let's face it, there's no logic when you have strong emotions like that. All emotions left. All logic left. It's just pure emotion. And he wanted to act on it. This is why it's also important to guard your heart and mind and to pray. Okay, side note, sidebar. So Nestor explains it wasn't enough for Narcissus to make women cry for dismissing them and being rude, and his heart just being so callous, but for someone committing suicide on your doorstep is a compliment? Like, you're wild. So Narcissus complains and asks if his beauty is a sin to Nestor, and Nestor claps back saying, well, if it goes hand in hand with arrogance, yeah. So Narcissus says, it's so stressful to be this beautiful and to have people pledging themselves to him, and that he claims he doesn't enjoy it, but we know he does, because that's what he lives off of. All narcissists really live off of admiration, or else they go find it from somewhere else. So Nestor asks if the sword that was plunged into Amadeus's chest, specifically his heart, if it belonged to Narcissus too. And Narcissus only replies that he didn't off him, so why is he questioning him as if he did? Inadvertently, Nestor explains that he did, and that his lack of empathy blinds him from seeing the truth of the matter. His lack of compassion was the result of Amadeus doing something so foolish but permanent. So Narcissus explains that Amadeus was just weak and that he didn't deserve someone like him anyway. Bro. The gaslighting of it all. Like, not my problem. Sounds like a you problem. Not gonna front. I used to love saying sounds like a you problem. But that only applies when it really is a you problem. Not when it comes to the matters of life and death, though. Narcissus is bugging. Okay. So at the end all be all, we could say that unrequited love sucks. That one-sided love where you're in love with somebody, but that somebody will not return your love at any cost. But don't worry. Narcissist is gonna get his. So, we now come to the point in the story where we shortly meet a young lady, well, a nymph, whose name is Echo. So, right before we meet Echo, it's important to note that we are now going to be introduced to a goddess whose name is Nemesis. Interesting. As in, arch nemesis, someone who goes against. Important to note. Nemesis is a goddess, and in Greek mythology, she represents what we would label today as Lady Justice. She's usually depicted in pictures as the goddess with the blindfold and the balancing scales, because her job really is to restore order and balance and judgment upon mortals. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, Nemesis, a goddess, now meets all of those who Narcissus has offended on Earth with cruel words and actions. And before meeting all of the people that were offended and deeply troubled and heartbroken by Narcissus' actions and words, right? She meets none other than Amadeus at the time of him offing himself on Narcissus' doorstep. Crazy, right? So, her job being to help all mortals, restoring balance, judgment, justice, all of that. Amadeus had actually prayed to her before taking his own life on Narcissus' doorstep, plunging Narcissus' sword into his heart, and she saw all of it. So she understood how Narcissus' pride needed to be extinguished, or he would ruin other people's lives through unrequited love. Nemesis knew the only way to do so was to find a punishment suitable enough to humble him. There goes that humility again. So Nemesis came under the disguise to Earth because remember, she's a goddess, so now she needs to hide among men. And she decided to disguise herself as an old woman. And she passed Amadeus's house and was concerned with how young he was, and being that his life was ended so shortly because he wasted his time loving someone who never was gonna love him. And that's sick. So Nemesis heard the cry of another woman who was shunned and sees a flashback of her and Narcissus at the day of the feast. She had tapped him on the shoulder asking if she could sit with Narcissus, to which he replied no in a stern voice before turning his back on Sis. And apparently that upset her so much that she was embarrassed and she was still crying about it the day after. So Nemesis looks at a flashback of another potential suitor who wanted to talk to Narcissus, but Narcissus tells the person that they are not worthy because of how they look. Yo. Imagine, ladies, you go to a guy. Let's say you go to a guy at a party, and you're just like, "Yo, do you wanna dance? Do you want?" And he's just like, "Nah. Look at me and look at you." Now, there's a difference between humility and humiliation. Okay, he dragged it, and he himself needs to be humbled, Now Nemesis feels some type of way, and I don't blame her. Okay? So Nemesis then goes to one house, to another house, and another house, and found that many other people had similar experiences and realized that narcissists enjoyed making others feel crappy. He gets a kick out of this, like any other textbook narcissist would. So, after much time of following people's grief and going throughout the town of Thespiae, she found him eventually hunting in the woods by himself. Because apparently, after the argument between Nestor and Narcissus, Nestor was like, fam, yeah, I'm cool off you. You don't want to be held accountable? Cool. We not cool though. Okay. So Narcissus is a bit off with his hunting as he continues to think how it was better to be cruel and gorgeous than to be ugly and kind, and thinks that it was okay with what he did because he didn't want to lead Amadeus on anyway. Let me tell y'all something. Okay, side note, sidebar. Was he wrong for breaking it off to him and letting him know he would never be interested? No. But there is a way to talk to people, and there is a way to tell people the truth, and that's in love. When you're not able to fully love yourself properly, this is what lashing out does. He doesn't love himself in a healthy way. He loves himself in an infatuation way. And with that, it's now pouring out into all other relationships of his life. Even just being an associate with someone who's infatuated with themselves, you won't want to be around this person. If that is not encouragement enough to do the homework of this show and to dig deep into what you don't like about yourself in the mirror, and I'm not just talking about physical attributes, I'm talking about the things that people consistently call you out for, but you're the only one who refuses to see it. Let's get back. So Nemesis observes Narcissus in the forest in the distance while he's pondering about the whole situation, and Nemesis is pondering about which punishment is the most fitting for his crime against humanity. So, without Nemesis knowing, she had a lot less work to do than she thought, because nearby was another situation hundreds of yards away in the same forest. So, hundreds of miles away, in yards away of the same forest, was a clearing with a bunch of nymphs. And within the clearing in the forest, they were partying with Zeus, which I'm sure, whether you know Greek mythology or not, you've heard of Zeus. Is basically the god of all gods, right? Allegedly. Because I know who the god of all gods is, but that's for another episode. But anywho, Zeus and the nymphs is out here partying it up. And for those of you who understand Greek culture, you know what I mean by partying it up. It gets rated R, is all I'll say. Okay? So the nymphs is partying with Zeus. Zeus is very much a married man. Okay? And the nymphs were having relations with him. Now, the leader of said nymphs was a girl whose name was Echo. Amidst the festivities, we meet Echo, who is, again, the leader of the nymphs, and decided that she wants to have a fun time with Zeus and her nymph sisters. Now, Zeus also enjoys the nymphs, being that he feels free to love whoever instead of being possessed by Hera, his wife, and feeling stuck with only Hera. It's important to note that in Greek culture, sexual fluidity goes in the same principles as what we'd know as do what thou wilt. Okay, do whatever you want. And what I mean whenever, I mean whatever. Whatever goes, goes. Okay. So Echo is parlaying with her and her sisters with Zeus. They are legit feeding him grapes. He's feeling great. He's feeling manly in the sense of he's manipulating women, basically, if that's what if you want to call a spade a spade. So Echo, being paranoid as usual that Hera might catch her and her sisters in the act with Zeus, tries to tell Zeus, like what happens if, we get caught. To which Zeus basically tells her, you know what? His attitude was like, since you want to talk about my wife while I'm trying to have fun without her, you be the person to go away and stand guard to see if she's around. Just be the lookout, since you're doing the absolute most. So Echo goes about her way, going through the forest, trying to make sure Hera's not there. And when she thinks that the coast is clear, she comes to a nearby river. She's trying to just relax and cool down, only for a sparked flame growing in intensity to the size of a flaring peacock to come next to her, and out of the flame comes Hera. This is my favorite part, y'all. It's about to get ghetto. So Hera, Zeus's wife, came down to look for him, knowing that her husband isn't faithful to her, and appears to Echo with disdain and rage in her eyes as she asks to cut the small talk. Okay? She's like, okay, what you're not gonna do is take me for idiots. Was my man here or not? Okay? So Echo tries to assure her that he hasn't been here, and her going back and forth with Hera gives Zeus and the nymphs time to collect themselves, while Hera decides to basically toss the forest to and fro, up and down, looking for her man. And Echo following close behind just to make sure that they're not seen. So Hera, searching the whole forest and not finding them, still pissed off, and Echo trying to put her at ease. Oh, see, I told you, he's not here. So Hera's pissed off because she knows what she knows. Sis told her, listen, there's thunderclouds here, and the type that's here before a thunderstorm. I know my man was here because he's also the god of thunder. She knows her man. So Hera catches on after not being able to find her husband, despite sensing he was there. She then decides she's going to curse Echo after telling her, since she always likes to have the last word, she will be cursed to not only have the last word, but to never speak first. Her name makes sense now, right? Echo can now only speak when someone speaks first and can only repeat the last few words of what the speaker says. Her sisters then find Echo shortly after and learn of the curse, and they decide to do what? taunt their sister by continuously saying her name, knowing she wouldn't have any choice but to repeat it back. So they're calling Echo, 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 Echo. Ain't that messed up? You took the punishment for all your nymph sisters, didn't even get to have the quote unquote fun you wanted, but you foot the bill. And they're not even appreciative of it. They make fun of you to add insult to injury. Okay. So part of her curse also being that she is in the mind okay. She's able to form sentences in her mind, but can't do so with her mouth. And that's what Zeus used to like about her, the fact that she was so boisterous and she was able to speak her mind. Now she can't even do that no more. And she realizes she's no longer going to be Zeus's favorite nymph. And she's big mad. Okay. So now that she's cursed, she had become a nymph of scorn and decided to, at the best chance possible, desert her sisters. Okay. And was annoyed because she took the punishment, but again, nobody wanted to take her seriously. So she flees and decides to go in the wilderness to live out the rest of her days in solitude because she's slightly embarrassed. Okay. Meanwhile, Narcissus is still hunting, no longer trying to forget what happened with Amadeus, but really, at this time, he's trying to restore his pride about not being able to be best in hunting because he's been trying to hunt all day and has caught nothing. He's big mad. She's big bad. He's big mad. They're both big bad. So he decided to bathe in a nearby river as Echo then sees him from a distance, hides behind a tree, and watches him in infatuation and slowly falls in love. Now, strangely enough, she had never been in love, being that nymphs never thought of mortal men to be anything more than objects. So basically, one narcissist loving another, but not realizing the other narcissist is never going to love you, right? Because we already know what narcissist comes with. So, Narcissus, speaking aloud in relief to how good the water feels, hears Echo repeat his every last few words and is confused, shouting, "Hello," to see who is nearby, but shrugs it off because he only hears an echo. So she stood behind the nearby tree and decided it's not enough to approach him, but she doesn't mind staring and thought it would be a good idea to steal his tunic and hide it so that she can continue to watch him bathe and not hide his beauty. Narcissist realized that his clothes were gone, but questions himself as to whom would take it. So he asked aloud again, "Who's there?" To which Cursed Echo was forced to respond to him. She comes from behind the tree, only to be questioned by him and repeat the last few words of each question. She reaches out to him for an embrace and plays with his chest. All the while, Nemesis catches a glimpse of what is going on and decides to use this towards her advantage. So Nemesis still watching Echo, right? And Narcissus, but she was mainly watching Narcissus. Now she gets to see Echo, sees that Echo's cursed, and she's like, yo, this is foolproof. I'm about to use a great opportunity on how to clap back and punish this guy. Right? So they're both still exchanging words, more so Narcissist because Echo can't respond in the way that she'd like to. So he grows annoyed with her, being that she can't talk and only repeats everything he says and tells her to go away, as she is not fair enough for him anyway, despite her being a nymph and nymphs being the most beautiful creatures and were known also for their striking beauty. So he meets a whole certified baddie, and not even she's enough for him, and he's supposed to be the most beautiful man on earth. He's sick. So he's so annoyed with her. Get this. He leaves naked without his tunic, angry and annoyed of her repeating herself and not answering him straight. So homie didn't even bother to put his tunic or ask for it back. He's like, yo, you can have it. I'm out. So Echo begins to cry for the very first time in her life as she feels rejected and was hoping he would be the only thing worthwhile in this whole ordeal of being cursed and living alone without the solace of her sisters. Nemesis, who saw everything, realized what punishment would best suit him. Nemesis comes towards Echo and comforts her as Narcissus had left to continue his hunt. Echo decided to follow behind Narcissus anyway. And Nemesis, making sure Echo's heart will be the last heart that Narcissus will ever break. Now, Nemesis, being a goddess, anticipated where Narcissus and Echo would go. Nemesis creates a small pool of water with a shiny surface that resembled a mirror. Now do you see why I said the mirror series? Now, in the mirror, she placed a curse on it that Narcissus' vanity couldn't refuse. She cursed the pool of water that looked like a mirror, with the intention that any man who gazes upon the mirror forgets himself and sees his reflection only, and his common sense be gone, and sees himself as a stranger. Now, this goes back to the idea in the beginning where the psychic had told his mother her son will grow old if he doesn't get to know himself. Aha! Aha! Okay. Now, Narcissus, right, after she cursed the mirror, he comes across the mirror with his mouth gaped open. He sees himself in the pool of water while feeling parched because he was thirsty amongst arguing with Echo. In an attempt to get water, he bends down on his knees, looks over into the pool of water, gazes upon himself, and falls in love with himself. He speaks to his own reflection and admits he has waited his whole life to find someone as beautiful as his own reflection. He reaches out towards himself in the pool, and his hand went straight through and recoiled. Echo begins to recite every other word he speaks as Narcissus grows angry with his reflection for not returning his love. And for weeks, He stares at himself in the pool of water and refuses to leave until his reflection professes his love for him. Being that that would never happen, he stayed there until he slowly started dying from lack of food. He died, and Echo's heart broke again. And later, she died. However, her voice remained only in caves and canyons till this very day. Narcissus' hunting partners went to look for him, but only found his bow and the pool of water. A small yellow flower was next to the pool and was all that remained of Narcissus. Some people believe that the flower, Narcissus poeticus, was named after Narcissus. However, others believed that Narcissus was named after the flower. But nonetheless, ego and pride left him miserable and dead, and finally, he had aged due to his stubbornness to hold on to pride and ego. So that is how the story ends. And boy, oh boy, there is a lot to unpack. So tell me how you guys feel within the comments. Of course, you guys can put how you feel within the live chat. But ultimately, we clearly see in this myth the personified term of narcissistic tendencies and narcissism, and how pride inevitably is everyone's downfall. Putting yourself before others is really the problem. There's no problem in having a good esteem about yourself. In fact, you should. You should be confident, but not prideful. And ultimately, in how we live our lives, the only way we should really live our lives is to put none other than God first. And this is leading to the order of operations. Now, there's more than one order of operations, in my opinion. Right? So, remember I spoke in a previous episode about the order of operations when it comes to God being God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the tribune. Well, there are quite a few other order of operations, and another one being, in my humble opinion, from what I've experienced in my life and also what the Bible and God teaches. It should be God, husband, wife, children. Now, before we get into that exact order, okay, we already spoke about self love and the importance of loving yourself properly, but we really needed to kind of go deeper and to go underground, because there's no good foundation if we don't go underground first and make sure everything's okay. So, with that being said, we already started working on the relationship with ourselves. But I want to ask you guys a couple of questions, right? And this is more so homework for you guys to just think about, consider. Maybe somebody has asked you these questions, maybe someone hasn't. But I think they're important just for you to figure out on your own. So, What are your biggest traumas or triggers, right? Do you think that you treat yourself well? Do you hold yourself to a low esteem, a moderate esteem, a high esteem? Do you feel that you can identify the things that make you feel adequate or inadequate as a person? Do you take pride in the things that you've accomplished? Or do you feel that you may just go with the flow? You don't really, it's here nor there, right? Do you believe that there is a correlation between how you treat people and how you treat yourself, how you were raised, how you were loved? A lot of this comes into play because we could take a look at Narcissist's life. We don't necessarily know if his mom was the best mom ever. Because let's be honest, as much as we like to talk about narcissists and people with narcissistic tendencies, do we ever stop to realize that sometimes narcissists are bred? Hmm. And it's kind of our responsibility as adults that even if we do tend to have narcissistic tendencies, if enough people call that out in love, or maybe not in love, maybe they call it out in disgust because they're tired of you. Don't you think it's kind of your responsibility as an adult not to piss people off and to make sure that the way you want to be loved isn't a problem for other people who want to love you? Hmm. Think about your love language, how you would like to be loved, how you feel the most loved. Is it unreasonable or is it within reason? Like, these are important questions that we need to ask ourselves before we even require proper self love. And I say this in love. My next question would be, what is your love language and how would you effectively communicate that to someone so it's clear and there's no room for assumption? Because there's a big difference between communication and comprehension. Ooh. And on top of that, for those of you who know you have a lot of self love to work on and self reflection to work on, can you provide yourself with the needs of your love language until you're ready to date? So, for instance, if I know, well, let's just make me an example. I'm a person who my biggest love language is quality time. Am I willing to spend quality time doing the things I love with myself so that when the opportunity presents itself and someone is in my face, I'm not going to mistake this person loving me just because they're willing to spend all their time with me, but they're not willing to treat me right? Hmm. Or let's just say I don't know, my love language is words of affirmation. Am I going to fall for somebody just because they told me I was beautiful 20 times today, but they don't respect me and there's a cognitive dissonance? between what they say and what they do, when I could have just spent more time with myself in a mirror with words of affirmation in the morning, got myself out of bed, and made myself, for the most part, feel better with the help of the Most High. I'm talking to somebody. Or maybe if those aren't your two love languages and maybe you have one that's unorthodox, I don't know. I know some people's love language is food. Are you willing to just go on a date with yourself? Eat with yourself? Be comfortable with yourself before you ask God or plead or beg with God to send you someone. God forbid you didn't do the self homework. You didn't take the self reflection. You didn't look in the mirror and uproot all of the things that aren't so great about you that you need to work on. You didn't do all of that. But you find someone exactly who you're looking for and you ruin them because you didn't love yourself properly first. And quite honestly, this is how we mess up. We ask for relationships, we ask for new opportunities to present themselves, we ask for a new job, we ask for a raise, we ask for a lot of things. But did we do the work in order to not only get them, but to sustain them? I could pray up, down, all around till I'm blue and purple in the face for a man from God, right? God, please send me a godly man, that he's gonna love me right, that he's gonna treat me right. Send me a godly woman that's gonna love me right, he's gonna treat me right. Why do you feel that God should send you anything and you didn't make a relationship between him and you established and yourself first and did it properly? So you can go ahead and destroy someone else as your foundation is destroyed? Think about that. So, for those of you who have listened already to the self love series and may have missed a few things, or if you haven't listened to the self love series before this episode, please go back. Whether you watch the movie Nefarious or not, I think the breakdown was pretty fitting on how God looks at his creation and how he protects purpose. Everyone here listening to me, you have a purpose, whether you know it or not. And if you don't know what your purpose is, I'd go ahead and challenge you to ask God and be still and wait. And he'll let you know. God has many ways of using things and people to confirm what he says is true. So just be still. Don't let too many influences get in your ear. Ask God out loud with all intention. Make it clear what you want from me. Just manifest that. God, make it clear what steps you need me to take, what people may have a problem with me with, but I don't want to take accountability. Make it clear the things that I may be prideful about. Make it clear that I need to be more humble in this area of my life. He'll do it for you. He's done it for me. He's still doing it for me. That's why I'm here. So, with all that being said, if you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the all notifications, hit the like button or the dislike button. And if you'd so kindly as to leave a comment, I'd appreciate that. And I hope that whoever is listening, that this finds you in good spirits. I hope you have a great rest of your week, that you walk in purpose and in power with the Almighty, and that anybody who has anything to say negatively against you, we're going to bounce it back from the mirror. We're going to look at ourselves, reflect on these questions that I gave you, and I will consider another episode under the Mirror series. If that's what God wants me to do, I will continue. If not, then you will be hearing announcements on what is next by Tuesday or so. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for staying dedicated to your own track record. And I'm telling you, these cassette episodes, baby, be prepared to take out that pencil and fix that cassette tape. That's all I'm going to say. I hope this finds you well. And I will talk and type to you later. Bye, track stars.